wasn't like that when I was younger. Like throughout my life, I feel like I've been the same person my whole life, like in here. But there was a time in my life when nobody liked me.
Oh, wow.
There was a time in my life when I was in my younger years, in my late teens and early 20s, where I was, I set off everybody's radar that, they just didn't like me. And I don't blame them. I didn't like myself back then. I was going through I was processing a lot of traumatic things, and I wasn't in a good place in life. And that's what it was. So that's why I'm a little bit taken now, like I said, to go out and be, when I go to conferences and I meet people that have seen me online, seen my info, and everybody's just so warm and open to me and loving to me. Like I said, it's like I really appreciate it, because I went through those dark years. Like I did. People don't know that about me. I wasn't on YouTube back then, but I went through dark years. Through dark years where, nobody liked me, including myself. And if you don't like yourself, you don't take care of yourself, and you don't give off that vibe. And people were like, man, it wasn't that I was shady. I've never been somebody that was criminal or doing up to no good. But it's just, I just wasn't, I wasn't in a good place mentally. And I had that vibe. I gave off that vibe. I was in a negative, you know what I mean? Like I was processing it. The other thing is, people hear my story, they read the book and they go, wow, how are you behaving the way you do now after going through all that? How did you do that? And what they don't know is that it was like 30 years of, you know what I mean? Like it was 30 years of being not, being very damaged person. And so, healing does happen, but it's very slowly for a lot of people, and people that have been traumatized. I'm willing to bet that we all know someone that has been through trauma that you go, man, I wish they would just help themselves. I wish they would just get their life in order. They're their own worst enemy. And what they're doing is they're healing. They're in a healing process because they're not loving themselves for, you know what I mean? They don't trust themselves, or they don't, the trauma leaves weird things on you. And some people snap out of it, some people don't. And I like to think that I snapped out of it. So.
I'm so excited. This is the First Lady ERIKA with Women of the Stars, and my friend Terry Smith.
Hi.
Jonathan Bailey.
Hello.
And our special guest, Tony Rodrigues. No, it's not even Tony Rodrigues, y'all. His name is Tony Rodrigues, but he's way too nice to correct anybody. But Tony Rodrigues, I'm so intrigued to have you here with me today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And I've been called, you can pronounce my name how you like. I've been called much worse.
I like for people to know that that's your name, you know, because what's going to happen is you're going to turn into a Mandela effect. That's what's going to happen.
Right. It's going to be a Mandela thing. Like, what is this
Mandela effect. So I'm here to tell y'all.
It is officially, with the S on the end, it's Portuguese, Portuguese lineage, and it's pronounced Rodrigues.
Oh, right.
And the Rodrigues, and then it's Rodrigues is the Spanish one with the Z on the end. That's the difference, which is an older one. Rodrigues is supposed to rhyme with the King Rodrigues that created the name back in like 1400 or something, like whatever. There's a history to it. I read up on it, and because I don't like to correct people about, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to interrupt a conversation and have, no, that's not my name. I don't want to do that. So.
No. I totally get it, because I've had people call me by the wrong name or spell my name wrong, and it's like, and people get real stinky about it, don't they? You're like, okay, calm down. Like, okay, we're not gonna shut the whole track down just because.
Don't call me late for dinner and I'll be fine.
Yes, that's all.
It.
I get that. There's 4 different versions of Jonathan that you could spell, right? So it's just. I'm good. If everybody gets it, like maybe 75% get it wrong. So just leave it at that. No biggie.
It's okay. At night, we just call him John Boy. Like, hey, John Boy.
It's a popular.
Not Billy.
Yeah, I had to explain to him who the Waltons were, you know, that type of thing. Well, I love your energy, Tony, and it was an anniversary show, and I needed a clip for you because I was like, hey, it'd be so nice if you participate, and you sent me the clip, and I was like, I don't know if he's gonna send it to me, and you really sent it to me, and I was like, he is a cool guy, and I knew we were gonna meet at the conference, and I was trying to make sure everybody had their, like, I said, oh my God, Tina does not eat any kind of meat. She barely eats anything, right? But then she does not eat any meat. And I was like, I can't have you come all the way down here to eat tomatoes. She's like, no, I can just eat a salad. I said, bitch, you can't be eating tomatoes. We gotta make sure you can eat. So I made a food list, and I was like, you know, what do you want? All you wanted was coffee.
Yep, it's pretty much.
Did you find that coffee shop?
No, you know what? In Orlando, I did go out to, I don't know the name of the shop. A friend of mine that I know through my show, Talks with Tony, on my Patreon show, picked me up and drove me around a couple spots because I got in on Wednesday. And then Thursday morning, we went out to breakfast, and he took me to a shop that had this, like, you know how they do the pour, like the fancy milk pour?
Yeah. Oh,
and
with the decorating.
Where it has a design in there with the milk, you know? And he took me to the spot, and it was like a lavender coffee, and he said it looks like the wings of the macaw. That's what made him think about it to take me there. So it was a good breakfast. But the rest of the time, I basically stayed at the resort the whole time. I was kind of busy. I got invited out to dinner, you know, elsewhere in town a bunch of times, but I just always had something going. And,
so you were at the hotel with the $17 coffee. I was kidding.
That's right, and the $30 breakfast, right? So. I managed. We ate. We ate. So I did get a sandwich here and there. So it was good. People were really good to me. I had 5 minutes of fame there, and everywhere I went, people were just very loving and very warm and open to me. And I was blown away, humbled by it, and blown away by it. You know, like you it's one thing to get up on stage and everybody like you, and then sit down. But it's afterwards and the next day where people to come up and just give you hugs. People started, I don't know if people are making fun of me for hugging everybody, or, you know what I'm saying? Like now they're calling it a Rodrigues, like give me a Rodrigues, like, cause I hug everybody. They're like, I hugged like 1,000 people that week. Or 1,000 hugs at least. And then I've gotten some hate mail, people saying, you know, I was at the fire pit. And I got a couple emails that were like, I was at the fire pit and you didn't hug me. And I was slighted by that. And I'm thinking, well, I would have, like I gave everybody was giving me hugs, and the love was real, man. Everywhere I went there, I just love that environment. And, you know, I'm happy. That's one of those things, like, it's not going to be like this my whole life. And I'm happy that I've experienced it, that I got to go there. And then like people were very open and very loving. So I think that's all. I think the whole world should be like that all the time. Everybody should be just always friends, you know, but you know, it is what it is. So
number one, if somebody didn't get a hug from Tony, I'm gonna tell you that's your fault. All you had to do was get within a 3 feet vicinity, and it was there. Woo!
I wasn't discriminating, right? Like and you know what I like?
Black ones, short ones, tall ones, white ones.
Everybody has a different energy.
The next conference, I'll get mine.
You know, maybe I'm empathic or not. You know, like to me, I think that I'm not any different than anybody else. Right. In my mind, I'm the same as everybody else, really. But when I hug people, you can feel energetically, you can feel energy there. And if it's in a loving embrace, it's like it magnifies it. You know what I mean? Like, and so you can feel some people you hug and you go, whoa. You know what I mean? Like, wow, and nice to meet you. And some people you hug and they're reserved. Some people give you the little tiny one, you know, they're reserved, and it's like less of an energy exchange, and that's cool too. But every hug has got its own signature to it, and that's why I'm not afraid to hug people. You know, I'm just not. I love it. I love people. I think they're my best chance in life is the humans. They're my last best hope is all the humans around us. So I love them all.
They say
They're
that
not-
the longer the hug, your hearts connect, right?
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
the connection between the hearts.
People were coming at me with like advanced hugs, like Tony, no, on this side. And Chris O'Connor, when I first saw him, we were hugging, we did the dance where he was like, oh, you're going in for a kiss, huh? And I was like, no, man, I just want to hug. And he was pissed. He was messing with me. And but people were giving me, they're like, no, this side, it's heart to heart, Tony. And you know, you hug like this. And I'm like, it's hugs to me, hugs hug, bro.
Yeah, I gotta say, there's no sword fighting. That's what they're
right, yeah.
fight. Well, I would say that it was the energy that you have. You exude a lot of energy online, like with your online presence, right? I was not disappointed at all in your personal meeting you person to person. And number one, I did not expect you to like actually know my name or like, hi. And I got set up, okay? Because it was like, hey, Elena and Tony and Alex, they're in the restaurant. And I was thinking like, oh, they're expecting us, because it was told to us like, go over there and and I ran up and I was like, poor Alex was like, oh my God, if you could just let me eat, please just let me eat. And I was like, oh no, this is embarrassing. And then Elena got up and she gave me a beautiful hug and she was like, I was like, oh, she knows my name. Like, and then you were like, your eyes just lit up. And I know everyone talks about your eyes. Do you know people talking about your eyes?
No, I don't know that. People don't. So in all of the talk that happens about me happens behind me or away. I don't know what people say about me. I imagine I get both ends of it. Like I imagine people like me and some people don't. And thankfully I don't hear it all. So.
Well, with the Galactic chicks, let's say they took a vote and it was like, hey, and I was like, oh my God, I think that man's married. Y'all better calm down. So anyway, and there was like these eyes were smiling and a big smile. And it was like, no, it was like, you were like, hey. And then Elena went first. And then you're like, okay, my turn. And you gave me a hug. And I was like, we need a Tony Rodrigues pillow factory. So everyone can take home a hug, like, And then I said, is that bad if somebody's been abducted? Because maybe that was it. They were trying to make pillows. Tony Rod, they were trying to duplicate you because they could not duplicate the love and the energy that you have.
Wasn't like that when I was younger. Like throughout my life, I feel like I've been the same person my whole life, like in here. But there was a time in my life when nobody liked me.
Oh, wow.
There was a time in my life when I was in my younger years, in my late teens and early 20s, where I was, I set off everybody's radar that, they just didn't like me. And I don't blame them. I didn't like myself back then. I was going through I was processing a lot of traumatic things and I wasn't in a good place in life. And that's what it was. So that's why I'm a little bit taken now, like I said, to go out and be, when I go to conferences and I meet people that have seen me online, seen my info, and everybody's just so warm and open to me and loving to me. Like I said, it's like, I really appreciate it because I went through those times. I went through those dark years, like I did. People don't know that about me. I wasn't on YouTube back then, but I went through dark years, through dark years where, nobody liked me, including myself. And if you don't like yourself, you don't take care of yourself, and you don't give off that vibe. And people are like, man, it wasn't that I was shady. I've never been somebody that was criminal or doing up to no good. But it's just, I just wasn't, I wasn't in a good place mentally. And I had that vibe. I gave off that vibe. I was in a negative, you know what I mean? Like I was processing it. The other thing is people hear my story, they read the book and they go, wow, how are you behaving the way you do now? After going through all that, how did you process? How did you do that? And what they don't know is that it was like 30 years of, you know what I mean? Like it was 30 years of being not, being very damaged person. And so, healing does happen, but it's very slowly for a lot of people and people that have been traumatized. I'm willing to bet that we all know someone that has been through trauma that you go, man, I wish they would just help themselves. I wish they would just get their life in order, they're their own worst enemy. And what they're doing is they're healing. They're in a healing process because they're not loving themselves for, you know what I mean? They don't trust themselves, or they don't, the trauma leaves weird things on you. And some people snap out of it, some people don't. And I like to think that I snapped out of it.
So that I was going to actually say the whole reason people received you so well is because you have that essence of, I am happy, I am healed, I am healthy, I'm happy, I'm healed. And it's like, oh, let's connect with that. And that's kind of the whole thing. So if you don't know about the conference, it was the Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference, right? Mm-hmm. I liked it so much, I dyed my hair that color. So
oh, that's why. Okay. I didn't know.
Happened. That's what happened. That's the whole story. I just gave my heart, and it was wonderful to be around so many people who were loving me as much as I love me. And I was receiving that they loved themselves as well. And I was describing it like love bubbles of boba tea, and you pop the little bubble and it's like, oh my God, this feels so good. This feels so good. It really felt good. I'm selling you stuff. I'm taking your money and you love me. Oh my God. And you're giving me a gift too. And you're buying stuff. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing. Even the show of support where Marvel, she's not here today, but Marvel had a lot of support. When people found out someone took stuff off her table, I said, girl, don't worry. We're about to be blessed because somebody took something from your table, because people just came and doubly were supportive of us. And it was so cool how Danny treated us. And yeah, we did have some seeds because we volunteered, and even the volunteer people, I was thinking, Marsha and those people, they were some special people. They were.
The crew knocked it out of the park at the conference. Not all conferences run that well. Not all conferences ran the same, even smaller ones. It's like everybody's wondering what's happening next, what's going on, who's in charge of this and that. And this one ran like clockwork. They were very, they were pros at what they were doing, It
was like they were also family, but they were also our family, because you would think with what we were going there to do, I was expecting security to be looking at us funny. I was expecting the conference people to look at us funny, but talking to Marsha, evidently she's from Arizona. What's the place? Where's everybody going to Arizona?
Sedona.
Like, I think she's from like a spiritual area. So she wasn't, she wasn't,
Arizona.
It wasn't unusual to her, the topics. It wasn't unusual. And her son was actually Josh, the tall guy Josh that was helping us. That's her son. I was like, she old enough to have a son? Like, how old are you? I'm not even going to say, because, but Marsha, I was like, she has a son your age. And all the people, they just treated us so well. And so when you were there, though, you were a speaker, but who was the most inspirational person that you got to talk to while you were there?
Inspirational, man. Inspirational is a tough one. I got to say that.
Or that you felt the most, that gave you the most feelings. There you go. Whatever the feeling was.
That's tough. They were all, as the course of the weekend went on, all the speakers, because we had a room where we were going before we'd go on, and they all left a big imprint on me spiritually. I went in the morning of, I'll say, number one, Alex is a hero to me. Alex Collier, when I was a kid, when I was going through that time that I said earlier, in my early years, when I was 19 and 20 and 21, that's when Alex came out. And I meant that, what I said on stage about him, that back then I needed him. I needed to hear that. And they just ran him off the stage. Back then he was in the news. He wasn't on YouTube. And then it was like they started ridiculing him and trying to bury his testimony. And, it was heartbreaking to me. So to actually meet Alex was like meeting a hero to me, for one. But then it was like first day, it was like I hung out with Alex. Then I spent an afternoon with Elena. It was otherworldly and amazing and wise and all of it. She's a phenomenon. I expect her to do great things. She's amazing. And we kind of talk, you know, when you're an experiencer, you know, it's kind of like two musicians that talk to each other. They know how to play the music. They learn from each other. And Elena really taught me a lot. So I was absolutely blown away. And she's a lightning rod, it seems, for criticism these days, because she's in front of the community and kind of pushing the info with live. She's an active contact. Her and Alex are active. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm an experiencer. I'm not active. And so she's a lightning rod for criticism sometimes. And I would always sit back and just watch because I didn't know for sure. But now after I've met her, I know she's the real deal for sure. And I'll always stick up for Elena. I'll put that out. So the second day I hung out with Elena, and I was like blown away by that. And we were fast friends. But then we did the dinner. Danny, you know, I've been on Danny's show and I knew Danny. I met her in person at Mount Shasta. But when she got on stage, she had such a command of the crowd, and her stage presence. She had such a huge stage presence. It was like she jumped on stage and shined. And so that I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, and I liked her before that, but I was in awe of her after the very first day when she got on stage. But then we did the dinner. Saturday night, we did the speaker dinner. Was private, and I put a little reel on my Facebook of all the people there. And Quetzal Shah, the shaman, at the end, when we were toasting, we were drinking wine and stuff. It was, you know, pats on the back and it was all in honor of Alex because he's kind of retiring from speaking in person. But Quetzal Shah started talking, and he had a translator, and she was translating, and we teared up. It was some of the most, I can't even repeat what he said because I was so taken off guard by what he said, and it was so beautiful. There were like 4 people at the table start crying, myself included. I teared up because out of the beauty of it. I wasn't sad or anything, but it was just beautiful what he was saying about the conference and how we opened a portal and like the worlds are colliding. The spiritual world collided at this conference, and there was wisdom got released, you know, energetically through the world, and we changed the world. And he was like, you know, and like I said, I'm butchering that. Like he said it 10 times more beautiful. I'll never do justice what he said that night. I wish somebody could have recorded it. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed in my entire life. Was Quetzal Shah. I couldn't believe it. And I never really talked to him after that. So after the conference, I cut and paste in the translator, and I've been sending him messages like, hey man, you know, like now that we can talk. And so we're slowly,
you know, that
becoming
Google Translate, y'all. Quetzal will translate. He said you don't need to know Spanish to connect. He said
that's right.
If you just put up and say hi, he said we're going to connect on an energetic level. We got that connection. So you don't, and you can use Google Translate. Do not be afraid. This man is like so wide open. Incredibly
wise. And incredibly a big soul. He's a big soul and a very wise person. And so I'm starting to learn Spanish on Duolingo and trying to brush up. So it's about time I got off my butt and kind of broadened my mind.
I'm talking about that to people too. I just want to catch up with you. So first off, let's say this about Danny. Number one, I looked over in my little seat and I said, oh my God, the lady has she's sprite like an 18-year-old with pumping the heels and looking real good and cute. And I already thought she was cool because she uses the word twat, and I freaking love that. I'm like, anybody who says that, I just already fucking love you. So there's that. Then Elena, I'm just learning about her in the last maybe 3 to 6 months. I'm just learning. And so, you know, I'm not like a person that's a follower, but what do you say when someone says these things and they happen? And I see her trying to teach people, you know, how to be individuals and how to grasp onto their own level of spirituality and not necessarily always rely on someone to fix things for you. And so I see that coming about, and I see the hope that she has for the world and the love for the job that she has to do. When it came to Alex, I don't know if he even had to say anything. And trust me, I'm telling you, I'm just starting to know these people in the last 3 to 6 months. That was not a part of my journey, was knowing them. But just to hear him to a little bit of, this is what we've gone through. This is what life has been like. And I'm like, boo-hoo in my seat. I'm like, I can't take it. I can't listen to it. I need to go. I'm walking out. I had to walk out. I could not take it. A lot of people were in tears. And you're like, well, what is it? It was like going to a Michael Jackson concert. You know how people just cry at Michael Jackson concerts?
Right,
It's like,
right.
what is it? What is it? I don't know what it is. But it just is. Okay. And then when it came to Ketsa, he walked up to my table and he gave me a blessing. I said, is that my prayer? And he said, and so she told me what he said. And then I said, well, is that my prayer? And he said, I don't know what he said. He put his hands out to pray and I grabbed him. And I was like, I don't care what he's saying. I don't care. I don't even know this man's name. I did not even know who he was. But I was like, I know this is good for me. And I know this is something. And I was just like, oh, give it to me. And from the minute he left my table that day, he sat there for the rest of the rest of the day from like noon until, and just touching hands-on prayers, just, and he did that 2 days in a row. It was no monetary benefit to him. It wasn't like a bonus and he didn't get paid to do it. So I was like,
He said it was unplanned, that it was just like he got in the moment. He started blessing people. That's what he does. He started blessing people. And then it was such, the energy was there. He just kept going. That's what he said.
I was the first one, Tony, that I know of in the room. So I was feeling good. I was like, yeah.
Right on.
But I
See what you started, ERIKA?
I had to make it work and people had to go get the water. So anyway, but no, it was just good to be in the room, you know. And I know people don't really care that much for Bible references sometimes, but you know how there was the lady who touched Jesus' cloak and she just said, I just know if I touch his cloak, something good is gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like you just know because you're in the room at this time, something good is coming of all of this stuff that we're doing. Yeah. So I know what you mean, because I was like wondering, is Sandy gonna do this again? I couldn't see us not doing this again.
I saw her just put a post today. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I saw her just put a post on today that GSIC 2 is in the plan. They just begun planning it. She went halfway around the world. She went to England and then back to Hawaii after the conference. I believe she's in Hawaii now. I could be wrong. And so she did a lot of traveling afterwards and decompressed, which everybody I've ever seen throw a conference, big or small, is completely exhausted when they're done. So that was absolutely, I couldn't believe she did some interviews. We did a roundtable with her afterwards. It's just, I can't believe that she's getting back on the horse that fast, but they are planning the second one.
I'm gonna say this. I just got an email while we was talking about about Marsha. Marsha sent an email and she said, "Dear volunteer team, on October 18th, a month ago, I boarded a plane from Arizona to Florida. I was so looking forward to meeting each of you, knowing that we were drawn together with a strong magical connection. I fell deeper in love with each of you as we created a welcoming, safe space for our guests as they arrived. I remain grateful for the heart-centered, selfless contributions and unique gifts that you openly shared with each other with every guest you encountered. Are you still feeling elevated from the event? Your special ability to jump in to help was greatly appreciated. Big hugs. Lovingly, Marsha." And so this comes while we're talking about her. It's like, ping, a message just popped up just now. It was so freaking cool.
What a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
So Terry has to leave in a little bit. Terry, you had a question. This is skipping everything, really, and we'll come back, but we're going to skip over because we're going to get to this part where she wants to ask you about the Monroe Institute information.
Yeah, 'cause I know that you have spoken about it, that was something that you used. What was your experience with it? Did they just use recordings? Did they put you through a program? There's different focus levels. Because I've done work with the program, so just curious how you I know you, and you said you didn't say anything bad about it, but that it was a program that was used on you.
So in the early years, the very first stop in my 20 years when I was taken, I was put through a trauma-based mind control program. And after that had concluded, they put us through like a remote viewing program. And the end of that program, personnel. So I don't, you know, I was 10 years old, going on 11. I can't identify personnel that was there, but there were a team of guys that were from the Monroe Institute that were very adept at it. They had, and afterwards, recently, I went back to the CIA declassified library.gov and looked up the program and the time frame. And it's sure enough that there are people from the Monroe Institute that were given security clearance that were working with Project Grill Flame, Project Center Lane, and Project Gateway. So there was the Monroe Institute. So there is a paper trail behind that. That being said, it was a classified program with kids that they thought were clones that had just been tortured greatly. So it's hard to point a finger and try to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to incriminate anybody, but what happened was afterwards, when I rediscovered all that, and I went and found there are free Monroe Institute guided meditations that use the binaural sounds.
Right.
And with what I remembered from experiencing it, going through the program, and my memories of what I experienced, I listened to that and was able to apply it. And I actually have a Patreon group that we use the technique for various reasons. And I have a document that I have something called the Purple Series. It's going to go out on a Teachable. We're still working on that, but it's going to be available. It's very powerful stuff. When we add it in conjunction with other documents from the CIA and from the project, and what I studied and what I remembered from being off world. So we kind of blended it all together, and it's very powerful. You can change your entire life just by meditating and manifesting things, like magnificent, incredible changes. Yeah. So we found that. But I am a fan of the Monroe Institute, and I think binaurals are a very powerful thing that people should be aware of and how to use properly. I think, all through the programs, when I was in space, the ETs were giving us binaural tones before we studied as well. So it is a viable technology. That's something that people should know how to do. It's very accessible.
I know we're both, Jonathan and I, are very familiar with the programs, and I've been doing them since 2001. So they are very, you can access different levels of consciousness that are way out of most people's ability to comprehend once you get, and the thing with it as well is that you learn the pathway to it. And so it's like, you can just go there, right? You just go there, and you're there because you've taught your brain how to do it.
I think people naturally do it all the time, randomly, and they just don't realize it. They just don't plan on it. It's something that, when it's necessary for you to go into a focus level to get in touch with your higher self or do business on that plane because you're affecting a change in the future or something that's necessary in the future, you're manipulating the hologram astrally from a higher focus state naturally. We all do it naturally. Yeah. The Monroe Institute teaches you how to do it on, intentionally, with an intent. And that's the other thing that I found out, is that your intention is really 90% of the whole trip. So if you go out there and you go into a higher focus state and you have absolutely no intention, you're at the whim of other intelligences that are out there. But if you have an intention, then they kind of get out of your way, and the universe, frankly, which is made out of consciousness, wants you to succeed and helps you achieve what your intention is. So I think the biggest problem a lot of people have is their intention is just to stop suffering. It's not to go, you know what I mean? Like they're adrift on the sea, and their intention is just to not be drifting, to be moving, and they don't have an intention of a direction to go. Right. And you have to have an intention. You have to have something you're working for. Otherwise, you're just going to be gone off course forever. And I think a lot of people get perpetually stuck in and burn up a lot of their lifetime because they just don't have a proper intention or don't stay with the same intention.
Right. Yeah. So did you do a lot of remote viewing?
So we did the out of body thing. We did do, so the program that I was in, they were hiding stones out in the desert. So this was at Inyokern, in the portables, in those buildings that I found that don't exist. I have a Google picture of them. I always hold that slide up. I said, you know, there's a website with all the tax assessments for every structure in the United States, and these buildings don't exist. And those buildings you're looking at don't pay a tax, and they're actually classified as special district, so that the local law enforcement does not have jurisdiction inside those buildings too. So if you were going to torture kids, turns out it was perfectly legal. But they were hiding rocks. They would paint stones and go out in the desert behind the airport and hide them and put flags on mounds, and we would go out of body and go over there and search for them. And we'd say, well, this rock was by this flag, and we were doing that. And that was some of the data they were collecting from this. So I really don't know how long that aspect of the program lasted, because it had been after the end of the program. The sleep deprivation they were putting us through, even after that, I lost all track of time. I really couldn't tell you if it was a week or a month. I really didn't know. I look back on, I know that when I got to Peru, it was right after New Year's in '83. So, when I got to Peru, they had just got done celebrating New Year's. Like, it was the leftover of the party. So that's how long. So I think I was taken in April. So, 9 months or something that the program lasted that I was in. But no, but per se, to answer your question, no, we did not do a lot of out of body. We did do out of body exercises and remote viewing, but no, that wasn't what they were after. They were after financial data.
So you're saying, under the guise of experimentation, the abuse is legal. Torture is legal.
No, I'm saying under the jurisdiction. So if you're a police officer and you were standing outside of those buildings, they were portables. You know, the portables that schools have?
Yeah.
So they got demoed after, and they put new buildings on them. So I know that that's a shred of proof that's out there. And but if you were a police officer or even a military officer and you were standing outside the portable and witnessed a crime inside of it, you did not have the jurisdiction to go in and do anything about it. It was a special district, has its own jurisdiction. You have to have congressionally appointed law enforcement to go in there and have jurisdiction inside a special district. And those buildings, that was something like, I hired an investigator a couple times to investigate things that I remembered, because that proof is a big deal. Well, for what I'm saying, any kind of proof is a big deal. So that was one of the things that shook out.
And Terry, with the association of this, how does it make you feel about the association of that, Terry?
Well, we know that those agencies had input, but it doesn't take away from the ability that what was developed, when it came to the binaural beats and stuff. And I know the programs that we've been involved in have always been, and I think Robert Monroe was one who really didn't want to get involved in it, but after his death, things changed and people came in. So it wasn't necessarily Robert Monroe's idea. So I think it's the nature of how things were handled.
So away
from the program.
I want to say this, that my first instinct when I uncovered all this, when I went, so I got all my memories back. I remember all this, and I started researching it and finding, obviously, the burden of proof. And when I found this, I went, oh, there's a Monroe Institute in Philadelphia. I think they're in Pennsylvania, right?
Virginia.
So there was one right. So they moved. I said, oh, there's one there. I'm going to go down there right now and clock somebody in the face.
Oh, wow.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I was thinking about this, but the more I looked into it, and I looked into the history of it and their classification. So when you look at their position, they were already in the deep end of the pool before they found out what they were doing. So they said, the CIA went to them and said, look, we want to use your tech. We'll give you $1 million. Will you help us out? And they said, okay, sounds good. And then they went and said, well, you're going to be classified, so you got to sign these agreements that you'll go to jail if you talk about it. And they go, well, it's $1 million, I guess so. And then they go, okay, now come out here to California, and they're little kids that have been tortured. So you know what I'm saying? Like, yes, right? They got dirt on their hands, but no, I don't fault them. And they didn't seek it out like that. And we're talking
No,
about
they
the
were
CIA
brought
as a
in.
way of
Yeah.
trapping people into unmoral things. So I don't have a grudge against the Monroe Institute, and I would definitely officially say that I do not condemn the Monroe Institute in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think anybody that can get a grasp around it should go and learn the technique. And we are all big. To quote Bob Monroe, we are all much bigger than our body. We're all much more than our bodies, and everybody kind of knows it, like. But this is the science of you going into a higher focus state on purpose. We all do it anyway. When you die, believe me, you're going to go into a focus 24, and you're going to find your way to higher focus states, and it's all going to make sense. We all do it anyway. So this is just, but Robert Monroe unlocked the technology to do it on purpose, is what that was. And the CIA took advantage of that because it worked.
It's really difficult because most companies, when you have any invention, or if you're studying any kind of science and psychology, like, people start out with all these good intentions. But it's just like every, superhero movie and everything that we watch, it always says what, like, with great power comes great responsibility. And here comes, this new invention that can be used for good, can always be repurposed. And I get to thinking, like, who's the guy that works at CERN? Like, who are the guys that built the machine? And how do you feel about it now? Who's the man that it's tough. But just to say, like, everything that has a front door, there's this back door where there's this one guy that kind of lets the things happen, right?
So I
don't
always
want to say it any better, but there's a back door to everything.
there's an intention to everything. So
Yeah.
I was always kind of fell for it too. Like, we're taught to believe that there's good and evil, and that the good guy is always good and the bad guy is always bad. And that's not true. I'm not always a great guy. You know what I mean? Like, I have, I'm kind of a jerk in traffic. I admit it. In traffic, I'm kind of a bully. I'm like, come on, move it. And so I'm not a good guy, and all across the board, among other things, and when I was younger, I had a temper, but it's intention. What I learned was, I lived in Hawaii for a minute, and the ancient Hawaiians believed that even if you did something and it turned out to be good for somebody else, if you intended it to be bad, if you know what I'm saying, if your intention was bad and the result was good, it was still a sin. You still should be punished for it. You get what I mean? Like, and if you had a good intention and something bad happened, then it was still a good act because you intended it to be well. It was about, the Hawaiian religion is about your intention, not the deed. It's about what you intend in the deed. And that's where I really got me started on that journey of considering what my intentions were all the time. What are my intentions? I always look at things like that. I'm like, man, I'm sorry, I didn't make it, and you guys, I'm sorry it happened bad for you guys, but it wasn't my intention. I always let people know my intention. Or if I'm mad and I have a bad intention, I'll say, you know what, I meant to do that because you pissed me off last time, and that's why I did that. I always let my intentions be known, because I think that when we separate from our bodies, which we all will, well, that's what's left. That's the raw energy of what our consciousness really is what your consciousness intends to do, because the universe, like I said, makes your intentions come true. Period. Like, it's a consciousness universe. It's a mental universe that we're in, the Hermetic principle. And what your intent, and people, I think their intentions keep changing because they're unaware of how powerful it is. So nothing comes true. The universe doesn't have time to do it. I said yesterday to the group, I said, if you use this technique and you say, I want an oak tree in my front yard, I want an oak tree in my front yard, a big oak tree. And the universe goes, okay. And a seed blows somehow, comes off a truck, blows into a river, to a thing, onto a truck, over, and then bounces and rolls down into your yard and starts to grow. The universe gives you your oak tree. And then you wait 6 months to go, man, I don't see an oak tree, just that weird weed that popped up, just mow it. You have to wait for the universe to actually give you what you need, what it's going to give you. Will give you your blessing. It doesn't happen overnight, because, you know what I mean? Like, you have to, that's just, there's rules to it. And it's just the way it works. So people change their intention before the blessing happens, and they think that they're cursed.
Patience.
And I think that happens a lot. I think it happens a lot. I now,
Well, patience, but it's a lack of commitment, because a lot of people like, I want a relationship. Well, fuck everybody.
You gotta pick somebody. Yeah, you gotta pick somebody.
And it's like, no, make up your mind.
Mhm.
You can have it, just make up your mind, and you can't just, you have to be firm with your intentions. But it made me think of, when you say the word intentions, it says the road to hell is paved with intentions. Then how do you?
We're paid with good intentions. Yeah.
Yeah, with
The road
good
to hell is
intentions.
paid
Yeah,
with
road
good
to-
intentions, which is true.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of perspective, and I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to stand by it and say that, that's a saying, and a lot of people are true. A lot of people have great. Here's what it is a lot of people lie and say that they have good intentions. So let's talk about, this puts us in the realm of politics. They always give you all these good intentions. We're going to fix this, and when I get in there, I'm going to lower the taxes. That's my intention, is to make it better for everybody. And they're lying through their teeth. That is the road through hell. The path to hell with good intentions is their intentions are a damn lie. And because they're using it to get their way. They're faking their intentions to get their way. If you have really good intentions, that's what's going to happen. So like I said, if you really unwind your life and really start looking at what you intend and being honest to that, it's life changing.
So that's just another limiting belief. And yeah.
Being honest with your intentions, and like I said, and having faith in your intentions. That a lot of people are afraid of things. I don't want to beat the dead horse all night long on your show, but I'm saying that a lot of people are afraid that if they have good intentions and something bad happens, that they feel guilty about it.
Yeah. That's a thing too, just releasing the guilt too, because you know what I noticed, it's like all the narcissistic people, they don't mind taking up all your time, they don't mind taking your energy, and they don't mind asking you for what they want. But then all these beautiful, nice, kind people that are so giving, but they're afraid to put their foot down and ask for what they want. They're afraid to put down boundaries, and they're afraid to really ask for anything.
It's hard. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
So, it's after a long life of being told that what I mean? Like, I was very shocked when I became a father and bought my first house, which I didn't keep long because it was in the recession. But when I became a father and bought my first house, and my oldest daughter stood and opened the door in the winter time, and I went, I remember how bad I felt when my parents yelled at me for, leaving the door open. You're going to run out of money. And I was like, I'm just going to see what happens. In the back of my mind, I thought, I got yelled at all the time for everything. The refrigerator, I had to close the fridge, so I could leave the light, turn the lights off, all that. And when my daughter left the door open and stood there talking to her friend for like 10 minutes, that it was a hanging penalty for me. I thought, I'm going to wait and see what happens. I'm going to have a look at the bill. Now that I'm the dad, now that I'm the driver in the seat, I'm going to have a look. And nothing bad happened. The bill nothing bad happened. And so what I'm saying is I was trained by that. Our parents thought they were doing the right thing. They lived in a different time. Their housing percentage was like 12% back in the Vietnam days. And they lived in a different world than we live in. But because of that, we were trained to think that we don't deserve to have the door open for us. We were trained to think that you don't deserve, because of the cost to everybody else, that you're a burden by having the refrigerator door open and trying to figure out what you want to eat. You're trained in the back of your mind to think that you're a burden. Your needs, your intentions are a burden. That's the message that you give to a kid when you're telling them that. And so I began at that time. This was 20 years ago. I began in that moment to untrain that from myself, and I'm not there yet. You know what I mean? But what I realized was that I believed falsely and I know it wasn't my dad's intention to stunt my growth, because he didn't know either. He didn't know. He grew up the same way, with his parents kind of beating him over the head about every little detail. And what I realized was that, my intention of opening the door and talking to my friend is a pure intention, and the heat bill can go up 1 penny, big deal. 2 pennies, $1, a big deal. There are things that are important. And what that does is, this is something that rich people don't get. they don't have that stunting growth on their intentions because their parents don't care anyway. So kids that grew up in a form of privilege at a certain economical level, they don't have that. And you notice that they manifest things quickly because they don't have that, because they were never taught that their intentions were unworthy. They always were taught that their intentions were worthy and everybody should get out of the way because they, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put words out there and people kind of read into it wrong. I don't want to turn this into something, but what I'm saying is people that grow up without that have a much easier time being fruitful later in life because it's a mental thing. And I had to really undo that because we grew up like that. We were a penny pension, you know, it was a one income household. I had I had 3 older brothers and an older sister, and I was the only one by my dad when we grew up, and only my dad was working. So we had to penny pinch and watch everything, and, you know, and so that mindset kind of carries into your adulthood. When you learn it when you're a kid, that's the baseline, and you got to unlearn that. Your intentions are worthy, and the universe is abundant, and you can leave the door open and get the job done. You can stand there and look in the fridge and take your time and pick what's best for yourself. And you know what I mean? I'm saying that metaphorically. I'm saying that completely metaphorically, and that's something lesson and it's starting to pay off. It's starting to pan out for me. That changing my mindset, you know, has really panned out. And like I said, when I was younger, I told you, I don't know if we were off air and we said it, like when I was younger, people didn't like me and I didn't like me either. And so it's slowly kind of going in the other direction. And there's a lot of love in the world. There's a lot of love to be had, and there's a lot of good people. And so, you know, if anything, I found that, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it. There's nothing to be afraid of. There, I'm done. I'm out. Next question.
I had to glue my mouth shut, Tony. I had to glue my mouth shut because when you hit on burden, I do theater healing with people, and what I see every time is, did your parents make you feel like a burden? And every person I've ever talked to says yes.
Yes.
If it was, hush now, just be quiet, hush, so we can hurry up. Like when they get injured or hurt, they weren't allowed to express their pain and cry how they wanted to. When they were sick and needed help, they didn't feel like everybody was, you know, like the love, that like there was time for love. And I'm seeing it too on the other end of it for their parents is when you're living in a slave system where everybody has to hurry up and go to sleep because they got to hurry up and get up and go to work, and they got to hurry up and come back home, and you got to hurry up and pay these bills, and you got to hurry up. It's like you're kind of, kids are like a afterthought. So the needs and desires and the pain and the thoughts of children are meaningless. It honestly is like looking back, like kids were so ornamental that, you know, you're to be seen and not heard. So it's no wonder we live in a society where children are abused because they have no rights. And I don't know, I watched some movie about, it was some really old English movie, and they were like, hey, aren't you going to send your kid to boarding school? Like, you're going to listen to them talk? And it literally was saying how their thoughts were meaningless. Like, kids are absolute nonsense until they get like 18 and you can marry them off to somebody. The kids, it must have been about Dorian Gray, or is it Dorian Gray? Is that word? Dorian Gray. So our whole attitude towards children is like their fodder.
Well, if you got that when you were a kid, it still is in there, and you have to unlearn that. You know, at least I did. You know, like and like I said, I'm not pointing a negative finger at my parents. I'm not blaming them for anything. They grew up in a different world and they were unaware, and it was just something you got to sort out you got to sort yourself out. It's not your parents' fault, even if it was. Right. So now when people grow up, it's like you're a big person and you can do this. But I don't know. I tend to be optimistic about everything.
Yeah. Well, we can be optimistic now, but we just have to understand that our parents were raised in a system where, even in the education system, we're raised basically to be the workers of the next generation, to be the slaves of the next generation. Whether, you know, You didn't really, you know, whether there's an Emancipation Proclamation or not, we're still raised in a society of slavery that once slavery is over, now you got a birth certificate. So that's still just your certificate of sale, you know?
So there's ways out. So the financial system, what it is, there's ways out of it. There's ways that you can get to the end of, you know what I mean? But they don't want you to know it. They don't want you to do that. They want you to, they're like, so one way is that you work and then you get free. And then when you get halfway through, they go, no, let's go look at that, look over there. And they want you to go keep going around and around. They work you till you die. And if you let somebody else work you till you die, you will. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of people don't have the inner, there's a fine line of taking care of yourself. You know, you're probably aware of the law of one, right? Yes. So I remember I said this on the show and people were like, wrote me and argued about it, but I'm pretty sure that the service to others, the proper balance is 51% of your efforts and your energy should be for yourself, and 49% of your efforts should be for other people. So that 1% really helps you grow. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people give 80% to everybody else, or 100%. I think a lot of people just have big hearts and they're so empathetic that they do that, and then they victimize themselves by it. And then the other people that are selfish are supposed to be, well, one's like 99% or something selfish. And even the selfish, even the narcissists only give like 80% or 90%. So they screw that up too. Not that I'm a fan of that. But, you know, the law of one, like I said, you have to take care. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I think a lot of people, and I'm still learning that myself, because in the back of my mind, I remember when times were tough for me, and I don't want to see anybody else go through it. I kind of overdo it sometimes maybe, but I'm getting better about it. I'm getting far more selfish as I get older.
Well, since you went there with that, because to my understanding, if we start overcompensating in other people's lives, then we start taking on their karma.
Wow. So yeah, that's
because they're not learning their lessons.
That's right. Wow.
Power, you're giving your power away.
Yeah, and you're kind of being an obstacle. That's heavy. I never really thought of that, but it's true. And as soon as you said that, I already thought of like 5 instances in my own life that I, probably should get out of the way. You got to get out of the way and let people do their own thing.
Helicopter parenting, that's what it was. I was trying to think of it earlier.
Yes.
Where, people always, they get to this point. I've seen people do it because, they say, oh, well, my kid, he won't move out and he won't do this and he won't do that. And it's like, yeah, you never given him a reason to. And so on the extreme opposite end at my house down the street, my mom was so in my face and so on my ass. I was like, let me get the fuck out of here because I can't breathe. So she didn't have to worry about kicking me out at 36 and me bringing, a man and 6 kids to her house because she was so on me that I drove to the other extreme. And so in that case, we might feel like, oh, my mom sucks because she just didn't give me an inch. But then she also was doing you a favor because she was driving you, maybe not meaning for you to go so far, but because she was at this extreme level, it drove me right on out. I'm one of the most independent people So
well, and you're a dynamo, like you're somebody that's, you're an achiever. You're a person that gets things done. You're not afraid to do, and I've noticed that about you automatically. So you're somebody that's on top of stuff. I don't like
criticism. That's why. So that's like, it's like this other problem that it created. Like, I don't like criticism. So you're not going to say shit about me. So I'm going to do this. So, but then I'm from a household where it doesn't really matter what you do because you're going to get criticized. So I live away and I'm kind of like, there's this other thing that I have to compensate for because of that. And so I'm admitting that I am extremely flawed because it leaves a space for me to be so independent that I don't know how to call home and say, hey, I'm going to be late. I'm so independent that I'm like, oh, I'm doing everything myself and maybe getting frustrated, but don't know how to say, hey, Jonathan, can you think of some questions for me? Can you help me with this? So it's like this other thing where you now become, why is everything on my shoulder? Why is everything,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. There's a
Yeah.
fine line. There's a fine line for everybody, and it depends on who's around you.
Yeah.
What's around. Not everybody has the same situation with
Right.
their crowd. And, I gotta say that my life is changing a lot. And I think it's something that should always be static. The people that are around you and the things that you're doing you should always have the door open for somebody new that can help, and always have the door open for somebody that wants to leave. I tell people that. I work with people, I'm like, look, I love you, and you are welcome in my life, and you are welcome to go. And I will love you still. I will have no hard feelings if you walk out the door and never speak to me again, and that's fine. I've had a lot of best friends in my life that I don't speak to anymore, and there's nothing wrong with that. The universe is a big place, and if you stay on one place your whole time, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of a waste. Like, there's 8 billion people now. You know what I mean? I venture to say there's a billion people out there that I would get along with famously that I'll never meet. Right. So, like, I think letting people in your life is healthy, and letting people leave your life is healthy.